everybody, we are back at another podcast episode. This topic that we call Afterlife. I want to give you a brief introduction of who I'm about to interview today. That episode that we had with Trisha Barker was absolutely amazing. I learned so much from her. And surprisingly, after that interview, there were a couple of other people that reached out to me. But one person in particular, I realized that, wow, we're connected to the same people. She also knows Chris Batch. She also knows Trisha Barker. And she also knows Peter Panagore. So I was like, wow, these people are connected, and I had no idea. This individual, she has an amazing experience. We're going to dive deep into that, get to know her a little bit better as well. But the one thing that I've learned is that people come back changed. They come back with a profound belief in what love is, where it comes from, and their main goal is to spread that same exact light. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Brooke Grove.
Hi, I am Brooke Grove. My NDE was a coma caused by systemic organ failure of the lungs, kidneys, and liver.
Yeah, so how you doing? How you doing since the last the conference with the whole squad?
I'm awesome. It was so great to meet everybody on the ground again and meet you in person.
Yep.
Here. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I know it's 9 o'clock back in California, but it's about 12 now, so I'm wide awake, but I still got my coffee ready to go. So before we get started, I thought it would be pretty fun just to have a couple icebreakers. Are you down for that?
I'm down. Let's do it.
All right, cool. All right, so number one, if you had to eat one meal every single day for the rest of your life, what would it be?
You didn't give me an easy one. I straight up, I know this isn't gonna be anyone's cup of tea, but I have to eat healthy. I love like juicy salads with a lot of protein. So
Yep.
any like a seafood protein salad sounds great.
Every day?
But with a boatload of avocado and like some super spicy stuff because I like fire. So
Yeah. Next one. You have to sing karaoke. What song do you pick?
I don't know. I'm terrible at singing.
Well, you don't have to know how to sing with karaoke, trust me.
I know. Talking near-death experiences, I will survive.
I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll.
There we go. That's a good one. If money was no object, your schedule was completely free, no obligations whatsoever, you're booking a trip for a month, where are you going?
Say I'd go to Italy. That's where my family's from, and I've never experienced it or seen it, so I'd really like to go to Sicily and northern Italy as well.
Yep.
Without a schedule and feel my roots, my lineage.
Nice. If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be, and who would play you?
You know, if it was made of my life succinctly from someone else's perspective, it would probably be a drama. But from my perspective, I would want it to be more of a comedy in a way, like a dark comedy. You can take these really dramatic things and express them through levity. As far as who would play me, I don't know who. That would be a surprise. The universe would have to reveal that. I have no association with who I'd pick.
All right, fair enough. If you were left on a deserted island with either your worst enemy or no one, which would you choose and why?
I would choose my worst enemy.
Okay.
Because I'm scared to learn love. To grow through love versus pain. And that would force me to cleanse and disavow whatever was between us and amplify it, because we are going to have to live and survive and thrive together.
Perfect. Since your NDE, what is your perspective on time?
Definitely an earth-based concept. I don't believe believe it exists whatsoever on the other side. So it's a wonderful marker for functioning in this 3D and 4D reality that we're currently in.
I think if I sound like a broken record from the last time we talked at the conference, forgive me. But just for the audience sake, during the pandemic of 2020, I was going through a time where I felt I was kind of in a dark place. Like I felt like, you know, people were dying left and right. You just saw like that little pandemic ticker, like every single hour, it looked like just a soul was gone, or somebody was just gone. And it's like, wow, like I'm pretty sure a lot of these people that died weren't like unhealthy. It just, we didn't know what was going on. And so I felt like no one had control over their life. And I said, what's stopping it from me being next? So so during that time, I stumbled across a lot of content involving near-death experiences. And the first person that I came across was Mary Neal, Dr. Mary Neal. And then the next person was Howard Storm, not Stern. Every time someone says Howard Storm, they say, you mean the radio guy? Like, no, Storm, S-T-O-R-M. And then the third one was Peter Panagore. And and that I finally got to meet unexpectedly at the IANS conference. But the one thing that those testimonies gave me was more of a perspective on what to expect after this. And based off of their just confidence, their conviction on what they saw, it just relinquished all fear for me. Like, even if today is my last breath, even if tomorrow is my last breath, if it's 10 years from now, this is not it. And even though as a kid, growing up in a more religious household, I still had that doubt. Like, what if we're making all this stuff up and we're just doing this so we can pass time? Maybe it's not anything to this. So, like, I really felt like these testimonies really brought to home of things that I've already learned, but now it's like I get more of a personal glimpse of what could possibly be there. And then after those 3 testimonies, it was just like, you know how YouTube is, they just flood your whole your whole dashboard with a lot of related material. And I've just been hooked ever since. Before we get started on your testimony, I want to learn more about you, where you grew up, and kind of your take on religion prior to your NDE, and we can kind of just morph into your testimony.
I'm from rural Maryland. I was born in the DC area and grew up about an hour outside of the city. And I had religion indoctrinated into me from birth. My paternal side is Roman Catholic and Sicilian, so the church was a big part of that side of the family. The other side was heavily Christian and Catholic as well. So my parents had a really tough childhood and came from poverty. So it was really important for them as they worked their way up that we had more opportunity. And their idea of that was putting me in parochial school. So in that setting, religion was even more put into my system. And this was a time in the 80s and 90s where punishment in those schools was allowed, and you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the dogma that was enforced, but also a lot of shame and guilt with actual physical, punishment or like really public shaming in front of a very small group. And in this particular environment, my parochial schools went from preschool all the way up to high school. So I was with those same kids, and there were only like 30 of us the entirety of that time. Now, I loved God from a young age. I saw God in nature. I felt connected to God. And yet the way that the Creator spoke to me intuitively was not the way I was being taught in the church that I was part of. I also had a natural proclivity from a very young age to question things. And though I was then very shy, I did not hesitate to blurt that out occasionally. So I can remember being in first grade and they're giving the origin story of the Garden of Eden and going off about Eve and the snake. Blurted it out, like, why is it always the woman? And like, and I don't know why that came out. It just came out like a force field. But at that point, they weren't tolerant of it, and there became a practice where I was an A+ student, top of my class, yet constantly kicked out of religion class for asking too many
questions.
And that really upset my parents because they were like, why can't you just keep it to yourself? Why can't you be quiet? Why do you have to, get them all riled up? Yet I now appreciate that aspect of myself because it informs what I do now. Yet it was very difficult to be someone who was very spiritual by nature, yet not aligned to the religion that you were being force-fed over and over, day in and day out for 18 years.
How would you say you view, just like, we could take Christianity out of it right now, but since that was our background, but how do you see all religion right now? Like, where do you think its original place was for it versus where it's kind of morphing into now?
I feel that as humans, we speak through myth and symbol. Archetypes are our language and they connect us. And so religion had a systemic role early in society of bringing people together to understand the great mystery. And I do believe that when people came through the original rituals and the original stories and the oral tradition, that there was a lot of love at the center of that. Unfortunately, they became institutions and operated by power, and power is not the language of God. And therefore, in many ways, though they all share what I would call the underbelly and the congruence of love, that's what unifies them all. Whatever language they may speak and whatever rituals may vary, love is behind them all at the core when they're practiced with integrity. However, when we get more into beliefs, when we get more into dogma, when we get more into this way, that way, black or white, right or wrong, etc., and then also enhanced by the perspective of that particular system or religion, then we become blind. We become unable to see the whole. We become unable to see beyond the belief, beyond the dogma. And when we do that, we lose a core component of love. We lose a core ability to relate and connect to everyone as God's child.
For me, just to piggyback on what you just said, I have this past episode of mine where I talked about rethinking Western Christianity, right? I personally understand that my tagline on my YouTube channel is a little misleading for some people because it says J for Yeshua, right? So, of course, automatically when you see the name Yeshua or Jesus, you assume that that person is a Western evangelical Christian, right? So, for me, the main reason I started this channel and I put my name that way is so that people could never doubt who my allegiance is to, but I made it my personal journey to break, like you said, break down the dogma, break down the barriers of man-made traditions, and really cut to the core of what the true message is, which is the way, which is love God, love your neighbor as yourself. It's not about denominations. It's not about us versus them. It's not an exclusive VIP club to get into heaven. It's how can we make heaven come down to earth? It's that essence of you're my neighbor, how can I serve you? And then that neighbor says the same thing to the next person. And when you make that circle, it's like you never have to worry about self-preservation. You just have to worry about the person next to you. And while you're doing that, the person next to you will take care of you. I think that is the kingdom. I think that is what we are all striving to do. But because of ego, because of selfishness, because of fear of death, now it's like we have to make sure that my family's good, I'm good. And I think in a sense that's how religion is. It's just our little bubble of people, and everybody else is wrong. Everyone else is going to hell, but we're safe. It's not about, bringing that same love that you have in your inner circle and spreading it to the world. And I think that's the true message of Yeshua. So that's why I always make it clear that my message is to just mimic what Yeshua says, but not necessarily what Christianity in the Western region says. And I think it's totally different. And I think what you said was spot on. It's just like that dogma, just the traditional sense of trying to gain control over people. I think that's what religion in itself has kind of morphed into.
Yes, and I feel that, for a lot of us in the NDE community, at least, I can speak to this, when we walk away from religion, as many of us do, and come into spirituality, it's often because of this awareness of the God within. Mm-hmm. And most organized religion, no matter who the ascended master is that they worship or pay homage to, there is a stigma against believing that the creator is within you. And I'm not saying that we are God. We are parts of God, every single one of us. And sometimes what's lost for me in organized religion is that capacity to tap in to your own Godhead, to be your own creator, to be in co-creation with the divine is given to the system versus every individual in the system. Because when every individual realizes I am a fractal of God, then those fractals of God come together and we have heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Yet if we're believing we have to give our power to somebody in the sky or to some, mass or to a priest or whatever, we're giving away that aspect of our own co-creation.
Yeah.
And then our power goes to them and we don't actually get to live at the full expression of our divinity.
Like in the Christian faith, right? It's kind of scary when people start saying, "Oh, we are part of God" or whatever. But it clearly says that. It says we are the body of Christ. So what does that mean? Like, you are the body, so that means you're part of who you call God. So to me, it's like whenever you talk in a language where it's above like our earthly like understanding, it becomes woo-woo. It becomes scary to kind of think about because we've been taught to kind of stay away from that talk. But the Bible is full of mythical ideas, like a lot of poetry, a lot of things that you normally wouldn't talk about. You kind of just skip over because you don't understand it. The whole point of it is to transcend and have an opportunity to learn more. If you know everything now, what's the point of going past this? Like, we will like in how our minds are right now, we can't even, and I'm sure in your testimony that you're going to explain, there's probably still English words that you cannot use to explain what you saw. And that's amazing that like we're that, and it's humbling that we're that finite, that there's a world outside of this one that we can't even use the English vocabulary to illustrate. And that just makes me so like excited. It makes me unafraid. So I think in a sense with these testimonies that I have to keep reiterating, it's not something to make people want to have an NDE it's to show you that do your purpose that you were called here to do, because after this there's something waiting for you after this. So if anything, it's making people hold on a little bit longer. So having said that, let's go back in time with Brooke Grove. I just want to live this testimony through how you saw it then, and then we can kind of explore your perspective of how things are now for you. How's that? All right. Take me back.
2010.
Mm-hmm.
2010, I was a doctoral student in clinical psychology, and I'd been really sick. And it's been going on for a few years and been given a bunch of autoimmune titles and labels and diagnoses. It's something just didn't feel right to me. I never heard the same label for it twice. And as someone who was diagnosing people for my own field as well, I knew that there was some danger in the fact that. So I came back east to go to Hopkins, as they had the leading autoimmune research center in the world at that time. But before I even got there, I had a very severe flare-up. And at the time, we knew my lungs were severely compromised, my kidneys were as well, and I was having excruciating joint pain and like rheumatology issues. And so that all flared up, my hands locked, they were turning purple, I couldn't move, I was in tremendous pain. So I called my doctors and I asked them what to do. I was going to be seen by Hopkins quite soon, but not right away. And so they told me to take my medication, and I did, and it didn't do anything. So I called them back, and at that point they were like, just up it, double each dose. That's what you need to do because you're in excruciating pain. So I did that, and I was on a multitude of medications. Now, what they didn't know at the time, my liver was also failing, and the kidney.
Wow.
And up those meds, even what should have been a benign amount, ended up causing toxicity in the liver. When the liver failed, I fell because it failed very, very rapidly. So I fell, incurred a traumatic brain injury, passed out. Okay. My family comes home, they find me, I'm head to toe purple from liver failure, jaundice, not able to communicate, I'm unconscious, so I'm helicoptered to Hopkins. When I get to Hopkins, my family is informed that I have a traumatic brain injury, that I'm comatose, and that I have systemic organ failure of the liver, lungs, and kidneys. Happened so rapidly, they believed I had about a 1% chance of survival. And so my family began preparing for my last rites and things of that nature. At this time, I am in ICU and they are working on me. This is when my NDE. So in ICU, my consciousness starts leaving the body. And there's this playful curiosity that I can only describe as childlike. That was sort of the motivator or the guide of the consciousness. And so the consciousness is moving around this space, curious, looking, why are they wearing these outfits? Why has everyone got this protective gear on? Oh, this looks like an episode of the X-Files. Like, I was very much myself until I realized that's my body on the table. And there was this almost like fear for a moment, because again, I'm still on this side. I'm separate from the body, but I'm in the earth realm. And there was a fear or trepidation that came over momentarily, a bit of panic almost. And at that same moment, I'm lifted up, beyond the human space to a place I can only describe as the cosmos or the heavens in terms of light. Literally looks like outer space.
Wow.
Okay? And when I come into this beautiful place, which is the most magnetic and magnificent beam of light, intensity of color I've never seen here on the earth walk, I've come into this space and I'm instantaneously greeted by these three light beings. And these light beings appear to me in this beautiful ruby red, a beautiful emerald green, and a beautiful indigo. Okay? And there was purple as well, but those were the most pronounced colors. And I was so overwhelmed by the love I felt for these light beings. There was an instantaneous recognition and validation of my spiritual knowing as a child, for these were the same colors, the same vibration, the same felt sense that I had known on this earth walk as a child.
Wow.
In that moment, it felt, and it was, and it still resonates, the spiritual reunion. I was really with these beings, these angelics, I call angels, that I had known not only perhaps in this earth walk, but beyond from this space. And everything from them and for me in my NDE was communicated non-verbally. It was all through telepathy, inner knowing, and though there was not a body, felt sense, intuition. And so I was welcomed by them. I was held by them. I soaked up this yummy, delicious feeling and then began to play. And they sort of just kind of followed me as I played through this space. Again, my curiosity was celebrated here. It was encouraged. If I wanted to go in one direction towards the darkness, it was allowed. If I wanted to be close to them, that was allowed. And there was a freedom and an expansion. And there was a knowing that though I could feel my own consciousness in its own orb of light, I was also part of all that was, all that is. And so as I'm playing in this beautiful space, there is a time wherein this most magnetic and most huge, like the size, I can't even, it's ineffable to say the size of this light, but this beaming center, epicenter of white, kind of like ultraviolet fire light is pouring out, and suddenly I'm feeling pulled to that light. And at the same time I'm pulled to it, and I'm just being continuously held in a type of love that is so beyond what we know here on this earth walk. It was an unconditionality. All of my questions, all of my wants, all my desires, anything that was going through my consciousness was just okay. It was all okay. It was all allowed. It was all welcome. And that love and that holding was so rejuvenating to my light body, to my consciousness, as it had been so foreign in this experience of humanity, this experience of being body. And so I was just soaking that up, and that was pulling me in more and more and more towards the epicenter or core of this light. Yet as I came into it more and more and felt even higher thresholds of this unconditional love, there was some portion of my knowing or my consciousness that did not want to reunify with it. Though I wanted it, like I was so overwhelmed with the love and the beauty, and I wanted to be with it, at the same time, I didn't want to merge. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so at that point, my guides, my teams, my angels, they reminded me that I didn't have to. That I had the capacity and the opportunity to come back here to this earth walk, to this trajectory, to this body, and to complete what my soul had come here for. Or I could reunify with that light. And they made it known to me that my intuitions were correct, that yes, I was part of this light. That was my original home, my original source, my original creator. And everything in existence on any plane is a fractal or fragment or portion of that light. Therefore, any choice I made would ultimately lead me back to that light. But not so much you're going to go forever, but we'll see you later if you choose to come back. And so I sat with that for what seemed like eons. I was comatose 3.5 days. That when I get to the portion where I woke up, I thought I'd been gone years. That's how slow things moved over there. So in this space of in-between timelessness, I sit, for lack of better terms, with the energy of stay or go, stay or go, stay or go. And in that space, I begin to feel a deep love and affection and reclamation of the physical body, of the person, of the story that I have been in this trajectory. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt I wanted to go back. And like icing on the cake, I then say to spirit, if I go back, I say I want to go, but then I'm scared. I'm also scared. Even in the space of love, there's trepidation because trauma is all I've ever known. And I don't know that I can go back to more of it. I'm finally in a place of beauty. I want to go, but I don't know how. Almost like the guidance or the power or the direction. And at that point, they showed to me, and again, this is through inner knowing, so it wasn't like I saw linear events that were going to unfold, but through this inner knowing, they told me that within a period of a decade or so, there would come a shift in humanity. And though I would suffer when I went back to this body, and though I would know more trauma, they did not hide that from me. They let me know I would go back to more, I would suffer. That was part of what I needed for what was coming. And in what was coming was this unfoldment of humanity having a very unique opportunity to bring in this light, this divine light, back onto the earth plane. And it wasn't grandiose at all, because they weren't telling me I had some master purpose and I was, this divine leader. No, they were saying many persons from across the world would be waking up together, and we would be using our trauma and our suffering and our pain to bring this light to those who yet have not had the opportunity to meet it. So quite frankly, the pain would become the medicine. And anchored in the light, and the pain would become the love, and through that it would serve. And having not had a positive familial experience on this earth walk or in religion, all of a sudden knowing I was going to be reunified with my family of light on earth, alchemizing this horrific trauma we've all been through, and I would be part of this in unity, that was worth going back for. That was absolutely what I was here to do. And so at that point I said, how do I get back? And they told me to look like the light, unlike any others. Now, they gave me a little Easter egg here on the other side, because as I'm looking for this light unlike any other, I see two other lights who are unlike any other in my first encounter of them. But I don't know that that's what they meant. I think they snuck it in there to give me a little support later during the dark times. And what I mean by that is I saw these two lights. One was an indigo as well, and one was a softer green, more like an earthy, mossy green. And these lights were faint compared to the angelics, which were super intense. These were faint, and unlike the other lights that held me, I wanted to hold these lights. And I didn't know why, and they didn't communicate. They said nothing, but they moved towards another light, and this light was uncomfortably light and unlike any other. This light was piercing. It was really yellow. It was very artificial. There was nothing intimate or engaging about it. And yet I knew that was the light to follow. And so I followed that light, which turned out to be a flashlight that was being pointed in my eyes as they were checking my vitals. And so that horrific artificial light in the left eye becomes the anchor that pulls me back into body. And I'm catapulted back in, and I mean, it was a crash landing from this beautiful, majestical, place to this body that is strapped down to a bed. I had a PICC line on both sides of my brain, so they had to strap me down. I am intubated, and I've been comatose for 3.5 days. They had declared me likely brain dead, so no one expected any type of response from me or even to wake up.
Amazing story, number one. Number two, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back at it, but so many questions that we want to dive into. The way you explained it, I was there. So, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll get back at it. We are back. After that, brilliant illustration that Brooke was able to give to us. I was actually lost in it. Like, it felt like I was there. So I wanted to take a step back. You said something that was super profound, and I've been thinking about this for a while now. And when you said that, that kind of sparked something in me. You said that it was revealed to you that humanity was starting like some type of an awakening almost. Like multiple people will understand something to push humanity forward. Let's take that. Let's go back to that. How do you see that now? What do you think that spark, that awakening is in 2023? What do you think that is?
I would say it's a collective invitation that so many systems, whether they're internal or external, whether it's your personal belief or whether it's an external system you give your power to, but both have crumbled. They've been crumbled. And they're crumbling in cohesion, right? And while that might feel like complete destruction, and yes, it looks like that on the surface, it's actually holy creation. It's an invitation for us to say these ways of being, these beliefs, these thoughts, whatever feelings, behaviors, these institutions, they're hurting. They're not love oriented. We're operating from the wrong program, and the program is just collectively crashing. So we can work to try to fix our inner technology and our external systems and create what we've always had, but we're going to have the same issue: garbage in, garbage out. And so the invitation of 2023 and the years to follow is to really create what you want, not what we've been given. A lot of us were born into all this feeling like we just have to adapt, but we don't. It's really a reminder that we have power. And I feel that for many, many generations, or perhaps eons, we were told we weren't powerful. And we took on a collective victim consciousness. And in that, we have brought great harm to ourselves as co-creators. And we are being illuminated through pain, which is part of our humanity because we hear pain. Pain is roaring its head, saying, "Can you hear me now? What will you do?" And so some people heard that call early. Some of us were given so much pain early on, or we came in asking, why do you listen to them? I know I was one of those people fighting the system from day one. And it didn't make for an easy path. But for those of us who have been way showers since we got here that are doing that work, it gives us a PowerPoint. And when I say power in this way, I mean through the creator's power, a creative power, creatrix power, not a hierarchical power. Gives us the power in resonance together to change that system. And so it really is really quite beautiful time when you see it from the aspect of this is an opportunity to not only let go, but birth something brand new. And there is always pain in birth. There is always pain in gestation, but that's how we get new life.
And you said a word that, and I'm sure it's triggering for you too, but hierarchy. Man, where do I start with that? So for me, I can remember sitting on my floor in my house and just looking out my patio window. And this is kind of the origin story of just how I started my YouTube channel. It was like, I just started journaling, right? I just started journaling my thoughts. And for some reason, I don't know if it was like just a random thought. Maybe it was God communicating something to me. But all of a sudden, just the power structure in politics, the power structure in religion, the power structure in corporate America, I instantly had this knowing that there's a better way for all of this. And it was like this, it's like when you get that conviction, or it's like so grievous in you, you can't let it go. It was like that situation. It was like a moment where everything just made sense. Like I was so blinded about just my day to day, where I never really just took the time to sit and think about how things are and why I'm accepting the way things are, and just like you said, adapting to it and not creating something new. Because I've always grown up to say, oh, if it hasn't been thought of already, then maybe it didn't work out. So who am I to try to create something here? Like, who am I? I'm not anything special. So if it hasn't been made already, it won't work. It can't work. It's nothing I can do to change this. But then I thought to myself, I said, no, this is something different. That awakening you mentioned, like ever since that moment, I have seen things just change without me having to put too much effort into it. It's almost like this is like a path that God wants me to go down. And even though I'm scared to go down, and even though I'm scared of the criticism, I'm scared of what, people that know me would think, right? It's still like this mindset where I know that at the end of the day, when it all manifests out, my goal is to tear down barriers that make people feel like they can't speak how they feel. And when they speak how they feel, it gives opportunity for healing. And I like the one thing that I enjoy hearing about near-death experiences is the fact that this, like you say, this is knowing, this telepathy, this, like it's nothing that your human words can say, but it's like this inner knowing of what love is. And it somehow changes the way you see people. Like, even like you said, when we were playing a little game, like you would rather be at a deserted island with your enemy so that you can resolve that. Where does that spirit come from? That spirit of like, I want to be on an island with my enemy and then resolve this. Like, I want to love my enemy. Who does that sound like? Like, and so you saying that, the barrier that I want to break down is the fact that we look for Yeshua or Jesus, however you want to call him, how we were taught about him, but we don't think about what he said. And then we are quick to judge people with a different culture or background without evaluating the fruit of what they're portraying. If the fruit that they're portraying shows love, unconditional love, forgiveness, peace, how is that evil? How is that an evil spirit? Because they don't have the same denomination as you, because they don't believe that people with a different culture is going to burn for eternity. Like that, it's that hierarchy mindset that was placed in our minds since Catholicism, that somehow humans can control who goes to hell. And I think that is the inner works of me trying to say, like, I'm trying to deconstruct or break down what I know is true and what I know is untrue. And anything that makes me feel like I'm better than someone, or that I need to convert them or make them think how I think, that's not loving. Like, who would want to have a conversation with you if all you're thinking about is yourself and all you're thinking about is for them to be like you? Where is the genuine connection, heart to heart, human to human connection, as if you couldn't learn something from them? As if what they're saying is invalid because they come from a different perspective or a different side of the world than you came from, than your Western philosophy. And this whole NDE world has opened my mind up to just people wanting to become one. That's what I'm seeing. It's just like people from all different tribes and tongues are finding out what it means to be human and how we can connect to the divine, the Most High, the Creator, Yeshua. Like, we are trying to group this awakening is to break down barriers and combine everyone, collectively bringing our resources together and understanding that by ourselves we're nothing. By ourselves we can't really get the full picture of what this whole thing is about, but together we can create exactly what God wanted us to create anyway. The kingdom.
Definitely. I feel that, a lot of what religion, by emphasizing the afterlife as if that's the end goal, which it doesn't matter which religion it is, so many of them do it. But what ends up happening is they make this emphasis on heaven and hell, yet they distract us from the fact that by focusing on what comes next instead of the present moment, which is all we really have a relationship with, right? But by distracting us from that, we often co-create hell on earth. And we miss the opportunity for that unity consciousness, that oneness you just spoke of, which gives us the complete opposite, because when we are in alignment to that, we can co-create heaven here. So much of this discourse on focusing on what comes next or what we believe or whatever, it's robbing us of the holy moment. And so, yes, everything you said, I'm totally in alignment with, because it does not matter what we believe. It doesn't even matter our experiences or all of that. They inform us to bring us to the table. But ultimately, we are all one part of the same creator. And all of that human stuff, it feeds us, it nourishes us. It's part of what we're here to experience for sure. But we are unified at our core. And so much of what causes us such great suffering in this incarnation is the divide that was consciously placed by organized religion between spirit and matter. We are spirit and we are matter. It is not mutually exclusive. We are both. And we will constantly, and that's what we came here to be. Our spirit came here to be embodied. Have human experiences. Human experiences can be transcended. Human experiences are holy. They are an opportunity to bring that God, that knowing, that consciousness down onto the ground. And we need to start meeting them with love, however they express themselves in ourselves and our neighbor. And I'm pretty much all of the great ascended masters said that in one way or another.
Yeah, so let's get back to just your perspective on, I guess, after your near-death experience, right? You're back in your body. Walk me through the recovery process and just how you had to kind of, I guess, cope is the better word for it. Cope with, oh my gosh, I'm in this dense body again. Like, you probably felt so free from it, and now it's like you're constrained in this armor. So explain how the process was to get reacclimated to just life as we know it, and walk me through just like some of the thoughts that you were having. Like, how did you get through it and become normal? Well, I won't say normal, because you could never be normal again after that. But how did you appear like things were getting back to, things under control?
And as I'm sitting in this body, unable to speak, and it became, there's panic instantaneously when you realize you can't talk and you can't move. So there was a curiosity and a fear that I was paralyzed. I that I was rapidly blinking my eyes and nobody was responding or attending to me, and I couldn't understand why nobody noticed I was in there. So it was very terrifying to be somewhat in a locked in state where I could not move, I could not speak, and yet my mind was going a million miles a minute. And suddenly it was a very human mind. It wasn't the higher that I had been in unity with on the other side. And so it was very scary in the first few hours or so of it. And that's when my brain, my human brain, came through and sort of helped me a bit. I knew that if I kept keeping myself calm, which I was working really hard to keep myself calm, that nobody was going to notice I was even in there. And so I stopped controlling my panic and my anxiety because I knew as a PhD candidate that if I let go of my grounding, my vitals were going to shoot up. And so I stopped calming myself, at which point I started embracing my panic and my fear. And that did shoot my vitals way up, at which point a nurse came and realized I was in there. And when she realized I was not in fact brain dead because I was so powerfully trying to communicate, she then created a code where it was 1 blink for yes, 2 blinks for no, and we started communicating through the eye that I could move freely. And there were periods in the hospital that were extremely difficult, and I talk about this often, but I want to highlight it because it's so important to what you brought up in the beginning of this discussion, Jay. And you and I talked about a little bit at IANS with suicidality and despair. I had suffered for the entirety of my late childhood and adolescence and young adulthood through complex PTSD and bouts of clinical depression. That's what led me to psychology. I wanted to understand, I wanted to help others, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I was healing myself as well. That said, because of that history, I had self-medicated prior to becoming an academic and doing all the things. When I was in trauma and I was still going through active abuse, I did what many survivors do. I self-medicated to escape because I could not leave the situation. I was a child and a teenager. That said, you know, of course, when family systems are very sick, they don't take any accountability. They just blame. And so I became the drug addict, the problem child, the black sheep, all of those things. And they took no accountability for what was very dysfunctional and sick and continuing to happen. And yet I left, I came to California, I got well, I became an academic, I became a therapist, all those things. They discounted all of those facts. All they knew was that I woke up and they said there was a toxic amount of Tylenol that had shut down my liver. That's what the doctors had initially said. They did not honor medical error for quite a while. Doctors weren't communicating across the coast. So my parents are told by doctors that do not know me that my liver failed due to Tylenol.
Wow.
They make the assumption it was a suicide attempt.
Wow.
And they run with that narrative. Now imagine you've woken up in a hospital, you can't talk. Initially, everyone comes in and greets you with tears and is happy. But the minute they realize that you're cognizant and that you can communicate, because after a few days I was writing with my left hand, the vibe just shifted. And at this point, Jay, and I mean, I had felt it before, but it became like dominant. At this point, my after effects are going on, which I'm sure we'll talk about some more. So at this point, I'm now seeing and experiencing all of these things that were abnormal to me at the time. I thought they were the side effect of drugs they had given me in the hospital when I was locked in. But it turns out my liver had failed. They could give me nothing.
Wow.
And so what I was experiencing was a byproduct of the pineal gland being blasted back open through the NDE. And now there was no veil for me. And I was able to see, feel, sense, know, intuit all sorts of things. Being that my family was very pissed off at me.
Wow.
That they were very angry and that they blamed me for the situation.
Wow.
Now, I have no memory of how I ended up in this situation. No one has told me anything other than my liver unexpectedly failed. I couldn't even understand how my liver failed because I didn't know my liver was compromised. I also didn't really remember the medication or anything of that. So when it's disclosed to me through my family that they believe this was a suicide attempt and suddenly shrinks are coming in and, you know, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? But from the perspective of someone who's just been through a very traumatic physical event, is thrown back in their body and is in pain without medication, the worst thing you would want to greet someone if it were a suicide attempt is with contempt.
Right. Why would they want to come back after that?
Exactly. And so I was very blessed insofar as I had spirit, had just revealed all of that. Yet at the same time, I'm thrown back into this traumatic, dysfunctional system. I'm blamed and demonized once again, and I can't speak or defend myself. So my brain instantaneously starts aligning with what it knows. And what it knows is to fight. Fight or flight. fight them, fight back, get well, prove them wrong. You know, my fight response ends up, in a way, assisting me in the hospital. But in addition to that, that's on the human level. On the spiritual level, there were the after effects and their communication. And while my brain kept saying it was a dream, and it was a very beautiful dream, but look at where you are now, wake up, this is reality, the spiritual knowing was constantly showing me like the hands of light. I was seeing all this light come out of my hands, and I was in tremendous pain, and they couldn't give me anything. So there was this guidance to just start using the light on my body. Now, I never worked with energy medicine. I had no training in it. I didn't even know if I really believed in it at that point. And yet I was being guided, and I couldn't sleep, and I was in pain, so I followed their guidance, and I did what they instructed me intuitively to do. There were other gifts, is like in ICU, it's a glass wall. So when you're in there, they yell code blue and code red over and over and over. And so people were actually transitioning and dying while I was in there recovering. And at first it gave me great fear, and I didn't want to see it, and I was kind of pulling back and leaning into the human stuff. And then guidance and my angelics, again, those same lights I had seen from the other side, I said to them, if you are real, if this wasn't a dream, I am so alone, and they are treating me so bad, and I am so scared. Please help me. And that is one of the golden rules of the other side in working beyond the veil. You have to ask for help. They do not intervene unless it's on this side, unless it's life or death. So when I asked for help, right away, those same blue, indigo, and red and purple lights came into the space. And at that point, I knew they were on this side as well. And that starts shifting the game dramatically, because now I'm starting to use the hands of light. I'm communicating with them internally. Since I can't speak, I can use telepathy and inner knowing. And now when they're yelling code blues and code reds, I'm looking at it through love, because I know they're being held the same way I am. And the most beautiful things start to happen. I start having shared death experiences with the persons that were in ICU. I get to witness them greeted by the light and going up. And at this point, my mind, knowing it's not medicated, knowing that I'm able to watch these things, and that the way I touch my body and work with it in ICU is shifting how I feel, suddenly there's an awareness, this was real. I do not understand what any of it means, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. Yet everything those doctors are saying is aligned to these feelings that don't feel good. Fear, guilt, shame, pain, blame, all the things my family's also going through. However, when I work with the light, I feel power, a healing, a love, an unconditionality, a wholesomeness. And so as the doctors are coming in, and it was Christmas at the time, they're playing Christmas music endlessly when you cannot speak. That said, they're coming in and they're telling me I'm going to be in there for Christmas, and I'm going to be there for New Year, and I should just get really comfy because I'm going to live in a rehabilitation hospital, and it's going to be 6 months to a year, and here's your wheelchair that you're going to need, and all of these things. And I'm internally like, nope, not happening. I'll be home for New Year's. And what was fascinating was when I finally could talk, my whole family was like, there's no way you're going to get home for New Year's. It's like December 15th. And I was like, I'll be home for New Year's. And the only thing that wheelchair is going to do is get me out of here.
Right.
And sure enough, I worked with the light the entirety of my stay in ICU. I was declared in spontaneous remission on December 30th. And I was wheeled out of the hospital in said wheelchair. I then went on to regain all my functioning, talking, walking, all of the things. My liver, kidney, and lungs went into complete spontaneous remission.
Wow. Man. So what would you characterize, or what would you say the light was? What do you think that, in your opinion, what was the light?
I believe that the light is really the frequency of love, that it is in any and all places always moving and always available to us, but because we do have this veil, we can't see it. So to me, it really is the Christ consciousness, the creator light. Like, we're able to tap into that and pull it through. Like, our bodies are actually designed to do it, but they're so blocked by what we put into them, what we think, how we operate, and also the belief that we don't have access to this.
Like when I was telling you about the time when I first started journaling, and then I decided to start recording my journal entries, and I would narrate them and then put like stock footages to illustrate what I was saying. And this is before I even started looking at near-death experiences. My second episode was called Beyond the Veil.
Is that our earthly experience is a direct reflection of what's happening beyond the veil. It's a world we cannot see because of our finite capabilities. How is that possible? Well, this concept is all around you.
Ah.
And it was, and I had no idea on why the word veil was like there, but in my head I'm like, there's something beyond what I can see. But it's like, I think what I can't see is affecting my existence. So it's like, I feel like there's this veil where I'll give you an illustration. And I actually put this in a previous episode.
Body are living organisms. Your cells have no perception of who you are as a person. It has no conscience. They have no clue about your relationships with other humans. Your cells lack the perspective of what's going on outside of its particular purpose. The cells in your body are focused on one thing, and that is to maintain the body in whatever capacity it was designed to do. Despite its ignorance about you, or even the other layers within your body, like the digestive, circulatory, skeletal, and muscular systems. It doesn't make these systems or realms non-existent. Somehow they are all connected. Without all the systems working properly, eventually a malfunction will occur. The human body has realms within itself, interconnected systems attempting to achieve a common goal: survival.
I think it's the same way with this veil that we're talking about spiritually. It's like, we really don't know or see what's going on, but whatever's going on beyond that veil is affecting us. It's like literally one and the same. So if I'm angry, if I have a lot of fear, there's something beyond that veil that I'm tapped into that is not loving, that is controlling the atmosphere of where I am. But there's, like you said, this active love that we say love, we say we love people, and we say it's unconditional. But let's be real, if somebody were to do something to you and they like, I don't know, offended you to a point where you can't even return, like, you say you love them unconditionally, but if there is something they can do to keep you from loving them, that is a conditional kind of love. But this active love we're talking about, that's the kind of love where you go to a deserted island with your enemy and you try to resolve it with them. That is a divine kind of love that, if it were in practice today, it would kill every evil we could think of. There would be no war, there would be no human trafficking, there would be no racism. Everything we think of that could just annihilate us as a human species, that real, active, unconditional love that we were talking about could end that.
Definitely, and it will.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take it there. Like, I know that's really hard for a lot of people to believe, but that is, as we were talking about this collective awakening, that's the opportunity. And I can't say it will be in our lifetime or in decades but ultimately that is where we're going, to the remembrance that we all have that power in us and that we come from that. But we have to strip away all of the mess that we've created, all of the debris, and that undoing must also be done with love.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just, we can't get to that place of the true unconditional mother-like love if we're shaming and guilting and self-harming and all of those things. Those very human aspects of a very dysfunctional system also have to be loved, because best we could with what we had.
Yeah.
This world is a mess now. Let's love the holy mess, because let's love that mess. It becomes beautiful. It becomes a prayer. It becomes unconditional love.
And what you just said kind of checked me a little bit, because I know that, you know, when you see a lot of hypocrisy, when you see a lot of hierarchy and sexism and racism, and it's inflicted into congregations, you instantly get this like bitterness. And I sometimes I see it in me sometimes, and then I have to check myself. Okay, I want to promote unconditional love. So even though those people are wrong, I still have to love them. I still have to forgive them. I can't hold on to it. And I have to realize that the reason they're acting like that is because something affected them. And they're just manifesting something that they weren't aware that it affected them. They were hurt. And so now the only way for them to feel better about themselves is to inflict the same trauma onto somebody else. And that's the same way with just war. If retaliation is constantly the cycle, everyone dies. Someone has to wave the white flag or the war will continue. So I just feel what you just said just now, even those people who are wrong, who are, you know, inflicting pain, we still have to come back at them with the opposite, which is love.
There's no judgment. Now, we've been taught judgment because our organizations, our ways, and our human believes in black and white, right or wrong, good or bad, all of those things. But really, from the perspective of the divine, it seems to be we create these experiences. And yes, some are horrific and some people are terrible. I'm not negating any of that. I'm simply saying from the perspective of unconditional love, everything is okay as it is because everything is unconditionally loved. So yes, we have to even love when we are triggered and activated. When a trigger shows up in me, because I still deal with my CPTSD. I still have to deal with all these things. I'm still very human. I get fed up with spiritual organizations and other things that I work with for the same reasons you just described. But when I'm triggered, when I'm activated, when I get into my right or wrong, black or white, this is them or me kind of step, that's when it's like, oh, wow, here's this beautiful activation portal in me to enhance my capacity to embody what I believe in, what I know. How can I better serve love? And how can I maybe pivot, and not to neutrality, because that's too much of a quantum leap in my opinion. I don't expect anyone to go from activation to neutrality because you're power. However, how can I support myself in going from this activated, triggered, reactive state to slowing down into more of a receptive, responsive, I don't like this, yet I serve love. How may I come at this from that perspective?
Yeah.
And those are the baby steps that culturally and individually we have to take over and over and over again, clawing our way forward for this collective awakening, because it's really what's necessary. It's an awakening day in and day out through the grind together. And we all have to love the mess together.
Yeah. And when we should have been making his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, that same ritualistic prayer that people say without thinking about what's being said, that is the whole point. He wants us to make his kingdom on earth. And I think there are people starting to wake up to that reality and understanding that the kingdom isn't your organization. The kingdom is among us. It's among us. And I'm glad to have met you and the rest of the NDE squad, man. You guys are part of y'all part of me now. So you can shout out your Instagram or Facebook or whatever, your socials or whatever.
The site is www.brookegrovehealing, BROOKEGROVE healing.com. You can read there. There's more interviews and other stuff if you want to check them out. On Instagram, you can find some of my poetry at Brooke Grove Writing. I'm also on Threads through there. And Facebook, I keep private for family and whatnot. So if you hit me up there, you got to DM me and connect first. Boundaries for my,
Boundaries.
Holy and beautiful. So much love to everyone. Jay, I love your energy so much, and I'm so grateful I got to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And that panel podcast that you discussed sounds awesome. So I'm in if they are.
Cool. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been another podcast with Jay for Yeshua, the Afterlife series, case number 5.